Okay, so I think we'll kick it off. And with us today, we have, as I said, emphasis. The plan, and I'm learning some new words here as well, as the phenotyping. So I'm very much looking forward to hear more about that. We'll kick off with Sven Fahrner, who's at the Institute of Plant Sciences at Jülich, at the Forschungszentrum Jülich. He's a manager and business planner at Emphasis. So he'll give the introduction, and then he'll pass the torch on to Tony Pridmore, who's a professor of computer science at the University of Nottingham. And he's also the director of the UK Plant Phenotyping Network. It's called PhenomUK. And he'll be telling us about the Emphasis Innovation Pilot. But please, Sven, you go ahead and share the presentation.
Yeah, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Enjoy your coffee, and thanks for having us here at this coffee session. Thanks for the introduction, Nikolai. As Nikolai, you already pointed out, so there's twofold expectation from our side involved. First of all, we definitely want to provide some information on Emphasis for those of you who are not familiar with that ESFRI infrastructure yet. But secondly, we're very much looking forward to get a discussion on the innovation activities that we plan and that we do and that we ramp up at the moment, and get your feedback and ideas on what we intend to do in that field. Regarding Emphasis, a rather long title, but just keep in mind from a, let's say, challenge perspective or domain perspective, this is food security and climate change. So this is where this infrastructure falls in. Specifically focusing on plant phenotyping. So what is that? Plant phenotyping is about the development and application of technologies and approaches to elucidate the interplay of the two main factors that define how plants would behave. And this is, on the one side, the environment of the plants, like water, sun input, nutrition, soil structure, etc. And on the other side, this is the genetic information that plants carry. And by using that one, we can find out and start to manage plant performance and plant production. And that's where the whole matter of food security comes in, addressing higher quantity and quality of plant biomass production, identifying novel characteristics and products from plants, influencing yielding, or first elucidating and also influencing yielding in stressful environments, as we may expect to increase in terms of climate change, and influencing sustainable production and intensification of plant growth, all contributing to food security and climate change conditions. Who benefit from Emphasis? Obviously a wide range of stakeholders, and those of you from the infrastructure landscape have many of these stakeholder groups on their list. On the design side, the researchers that are in need of quantitative plant assessment, the public sector's investment of infrastructures, the scientific institutions carrying and operating facilities, the society in general, but as a major part for the data industry part. Aiming at harnessing innovation in technology development and its application for breeding. So this is the group that we will talk about today and address today when talking about the innovation pilot. Plant phenotype in Europe. Emphasis is a really distributed infrastructure, like illustrated here on the map. So this is the result of a mapping exercise that we've done and are still doing on plant phenotyping facilities in Europe. Without going into detail, you can find all the information on the Emphasis homepage. This is just to illustrate the potential of Emphasis in Europe, covering multiple climate conditions, covering multiple climate zones, and also from a political perspective, obviously covering a huge amount of countries of interest when you talk about the development of Europe. Please don't be confused about the different colors. Of the bubbles, they indicate different categories that Emphasis brings together in terms of facilities, including what you would know from your fields and domains, kind of a lab work and lab-focused facilities, then the kind of typical or rather focused towards agriculture, the field facilities, and then what you also know from infrastructure, so modeling, science, and a data computational service. So without going into detail, just saying, if you go to the homepage, you will find much more information about the different categories if you want to have some further information. And the homepage is also the interesting aspect to bring up here, a one-stop shop for participation that we offer on the Emphasis homepage. So if after the session you feel that you or some of your colleagues that you would like to talk about may have a role in Emphasis and in participating, then please go to our homepage. We have kind of a, we guide you through a potential participation pathway in Emphasis. Find your way depending on your position, and then you can see how you could participate and bring in your expertise or your interests towards the Emphasis side. So feel free to make use of that one, to go to the homepage and see where you could participate and contribute. Emphasis is currently still implementing. So for those of you having an experience knowledge in infrastructures, that means Emphasis is not operational yet, so cannot provide a full set of services already. Emphasis has concluded and finalized its prep phase, saying there's a business plan now that we have a written document developed in communication and discussion with the community. And this strategy is now going to be implemented step by step. And one of the aspects and one of the activities we do to that end is the so-called pilot services, saying we have different fields and demands identified, and that we already try to meet and create some benefits for the community with limited resources, obviously, but still addressing what the community has. And one of these pilots is the so-called innovation pilot, where Tony will then introduce you a little more on that one and provide you with some information. Just to say, again, if you need some further information on the pilots, you could either address us in the aftermath, or you can, as a first step, go to the homepage, where you again find much more information on the different fields of activity as pilots. Having said that, Tony, do you want to take over at that point?
Okay. So I should say we are working from the same file, but it's just easier if we take turns at sharing it. Okay, so you should be able to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I should say at the beginning that I'm aware that I'm very much the new boy in this group. If I'm talking to people who have, excuse me, a lot of experience of industrial liaison and industrial contact. I'm a professor of computer science. My group develops computer vision and machine learning approaches to phenotyping problems. So we point cameras at plants and we try to extract information from them. I got into the innovation side of Emphasis because the Emphasis preparatory phrase consortium has comparatively few people in it who do that. Yeah? And also within the PhenomUK network, we encourage innovation in a slightly broader sense, in that we actually have funds that we can use to fund research projects, that have to be involve an element of technology. So we've funded 11 small projects that will try to bring people from the engineering and physical sciences computing communities into life sciences to work on phenotyping. And some of those have been done with SMEs and small companies and so on. Yeah? But I'm not an ILO or an ICO in your terms, and I don't have very much experience of it. So today I'm going to tell you what we're trying to do, and I'm hoping that you will tell me where I'm going wrong and give me some tips if I want. So the whole point of Emphasis, at the core of it, is the distributed infrastructure that Sven showed. Across all these countries, lots of different installations that measure some part of some plants in some way. And what we're trying to do is tie them together and make them an infrastructure. So this is very much kind of bottom-up combination of things that are there. And a lot of Emphasis has focused on access across the network, so that people can go from one country to another and use facilities. And it's focused on how we tie the data together that comes out of them and so on. So innovation is more coming into it towards the end of the thing, because we are, as we build this infrastructure, we need to make sure that it's updated. So it's no good us building an infrastructure based just on the technologies that's there now without some sort of plan for creating new techniques and getting the best available technologies in there. It's an interesting part of this area that phenotyping techniques are still developing. So it's very much a moving target. So what we're hoping here is that emphasis will benefit from getting new techniques from industry or from academia, and that if emphasis works, then it will become a significant market for phenotyping tools and techniques. Right? And we're hoping that we will be able to both influence companies and academic groups to address problems that are important to emphasis and so to the whole community, and allow them, if you like, a little bit of security in doing so. Right? If a company knows there is a market across the emphasis network of installations for a particular tool, maybe they can be more confident that they can develop it. So that's what we're hoping for. So we're trying to ensure that it's sustainable, and we're trying to support and drive innovation in phenotyping tools in different ways. So emphasis has been quite a long time in the planning. It built on top of two projects that were called EPPN and EPPN 2020, which was the European Plant Phenotyping Network. So some things we've already done, which explains why some things are missing from this. We think that the Emphasis Innovation Service will likely act as a broker between infrastructure operators and the technology developers and suppliers. Yeah, we don't think that the funding that we're likely to have will allow us to drive very much innovation ourselves. We're going to be bringing people together and encouraging, helping them to do it. So this was this is the set of things that we're trying to do through our pilot activity. The first task is to engage with the key people. Right? So we are aiming to create a register of academic experts and a register of industrial contacts, so that we know who's out there, and we gather our community, and then select some people from that to become more involved and form an innovation board. So far, that's started. We've got a register of industrial contacts. We haven't got as many as I thought we might get, given how many companies we know are out there, but we've got some engagement from industrial contacts. We've got a lot of contacts in academia through membership of the various societies and networks and so on. Yeah. Again, getting them to engage and be more active within this has proved a little difficult. Go back to the end. So having set up our community, found our community, if you like, we had two things in mind. One was to provide services for people who actually operate emphasis infrastructures and their users. And the way that we saw this working was that we would ask our community what technical challenges and technologies they were interested in and they needed guidance on, and we would demonstrate that we can provide information on those techniques to them in a digestible form. Okay. We also like the idea of having registered experts agree to be available to provide advice on tools and methods, okay? So that we can actually help people who are trying to build or operate or update phenotyping infrastructures. Tended to find so far that people who are recognized as experts in the field, when you ask them if they want to provide advice to people, say, how do you going to pay me? What's in it for me? Why do I want to do that? You know? So struggling a little bit with this one. But the idea is that what we can do is, through some mechanism, we can provide technical reports and advice to the users of infrastructures to help them better understand, if you like, the technological landscape. Yeah. Something we've got on a little bit better with, because I suspect because it's more concrete, is to try to provide innovation services for industry and academic developers. Okay. So an obvious thing that's missing from this is that we are not including in the pilot the idea of providing access to the facilities to industrial developers. We're not piloting that because we know that we can do it. Through the EPPN projects, we had a program of transnational access where people could move from one country to another, funded by the EU, to do experiments. And those experiments could be experimenting with different parts of new technologies and seeing how well they fit into a phenotyping environment. So we've done that. And a lot of the national networks have also done that as well. So we do have companies coming in through PhenomUK and testing their technologies in UK-based things. So we're fairly confident we know that we can do that. So we tried to go beyond that in the innovation pilot. And the idea was that a specific thing that people would like, and it came up quite a lot in our governing body meetings, is a lot of people out there are working with machine learning and image analysis. And with the current work on deep machine learning, a key part of it is having access to annotated data sets so that you can train your machine learning system up to recognize the thing that you want or make the measurement that you want. Okay, so what we've done under this task, and we've actually done this one first, we've done them out of order, is to review what sort of data sets are out there for use in phenotyping technology, and then go to the community and say, look, this stuff is out there. What would you like? And if you tell us what you would like, we will do our best to do it. We have someone working at Nottingham who is skilled in the creation of these data sets and the tools that you need to do it, and is set up to do it. The reason that we did this one first is the difficulties that I had, possibly because it's difficult, possibly because I'm a computer scientist and not an industrial liaison officer, in engaging with people. And so we came to the conclusion that it might be an idea to go to people and offer them something first before asking them for something. Okay. So what we've done so far then is we have an initial setup of, we have 25 companies. I don't know how good that is in this environment. On the one hand, 25 seems like a decent number. On the other, there were several hundred that were recognized, and we didn't get very high take-up in trying to get them further involved. We have 25 companies of various sorts involved. We have produced our first technical report, which has gone out to the community, along with the question, what else would you like? The current draft of it is too long, and I'm trying to find a way to shorten it a little bit and make it more palatable for these people, but that will go out very, very shortly. And we're kind of hoping that the two things come together, and that when presented with something that's hopefully useful, and then asked a question about whether they want to get more involved, we'll get better take-up. I have no idea if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but at the moment it's the only one that I've got. So we're going to see what happens, unless you can advise me differently. So there was some discussion this morning of questions that I might be asked. The questions that I have that I would appreciate any comments on at all is, if someone could give me some tips on how to engage developers, that would be great. We're working with the assumption that providing some resources up front, giving something before asking for something, is a good way to do it. Yeah. We've done a lot of work trying to get contact with individual companies. And I've had quite a lot of conversations with individual companies, sort of trying to recruit them to the cause, and wonder really whether that's the best way to do it or whether there are other bodies to go through it. So at the moment, we're planning an event with the business development officers from some of the UK phenotyping centres, or from the universities that these centres are in the hope that maybe what we should do is what Enrich is doing, make a network of people who contact industries more than a network of industries directly, immediately. And so I'm trying to do a little mini Enrich, and I don't know if that's a good idea either. Yeah? And so any suggestions on how we do this would be very welcome. So that's where we are. We have some plans. Some of them are going well, some of them are going less well, but that's what we're trying to do. Great. And with that, I'll be quiet and see how horrified Sven's face looks.
Thanks, Tony. Good, so that's work in progress.
Very much work in progress, yeah.
Yep. As I said, I mean, you're all welcome to chip in with your opinions or good advice or comments. We're not so many, so you can speak out, but if you prefer, you can also raise your hand or write something in the chat. Claudia, please go ahead.
Well, it's really interesting, Tony, and it's good to see all those issues. We got operational in 2012, and we went in some cases very much as an experiment because there was nothing before us. Then it's interesting to see all of those discussions at that point. Then the decisions we took that we should always rethink is that we separate the industry access, depending if is for competition for things they don't want to publicize, they don't want to publish, to the things they are prepared to publish. Then basically, Instruct centrally only deal with proposals of industry that they are prepared to publish. And we leave the competitive part to, we provide information, we provide support, but the interaction is within our nodes, within our centers, in a distributed way to decrease the amount of bureaucracy. The companies deal directly with our centers. Then this is more or less very simplified how we go about it, but it's definitely something that we are always reviewing, and we are interested to see what other people's views are.
So I think that may be something that we've been struggling with a bit, and until we started to actually approach industries, didn't really realize I don't know whether Sven agrees with this, but I think in a lot of the discussions during the Emphasis Prep project, we talked about industry largely with the view that they were more like academics than they probably are. Yeah, and we talked about what people are prepared to share and so on. But so far, I think I've had difficulty engaging both academics and industries, and I think for the industries it's because they're worried about what gets shared. Yeah, and for the academics it's because they are not worried about what gets shared, but they've got a lot of projects, and it's not clear what they benefit from helping. Yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting problem.
It's a real culture class, I guess. Can I ask, are you set up to handle confidentiality as it is?
I mean, we've kind of skirted around it. We've kind of taken this approach that we'll try to be a broker, and if a company wants to work with a phenotyping installation, that's fine, and they can make a deal with them. We've got partners in so many countries that the idea of any sort of wide-ranging emphasis agreement is just not possible. Yeah? So we've tried to avoid it with that. I think the difficulty we have is getting started. If we can once get it out there and get industry to realize that they can do this, yeah, then I think that model will work of them making individual deals. Okay. But it's sort of getting off the ground is tricky, I think.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Jimmy?
Yeah, thank you very much for a very good presentation. And you're straight down my alley. I'm coming from industry and working at European Relations Source with these kind of things. I think you've thought about a lot of the right things. You're talking about services and providing expert advice to industry. This is a very strong product and a very strong let's say, door opener. But if I may say, it might be that you somehow need to connect it together. What we are talking a lot about at ESS is a kind of an innovative ecosystem. And you can say, why would we do that? And it's generally, I think, in a simplified way, because academia look very, very vertically, very narrow, but industry in general look horizontally, very wide. So this one size fit all is not possible. And maybe it would be worth for you to look at existing ecosystems where you could fit in and become not a solo musician, but play in a band where they actually have more services at a wider perspective. And also they have involved companies there. I also think maybe you're underestimating the value of the brokerage, because the broker is often a neutral meeting platform for different companies and even academia and the companies. So maybe you should think about establishing some kind of platform, and that could be sort of standard non-disclosure agreements or whatever. I wouldn't bother too much to go into the IP side, because then it gets really difficult. But I think maybe you have more to offer than you realize, because it's often a neutral meeting place that companies are looking for. Yeah, I think I will leave it by that. And also, industry like case studies very much. They would like references where they can recognize themselves, and maybe not a bottom-up, let's say, definition, but more and description, but more to say, what have others done to solve a similar problem, or where there's some synergies. They are normally very have big ears for that. So it's just my immediate.
Thank you. That helps. So the case studies, particularly when we have a couple of, so crossing my mind immediately is we have some case studies. So we don't have very many, but we compared to the number of academic scientists who did it, but we do have some companies who went through the EPPN network into infrastructures and did some work. I also have, and I'm sure other national networks have the same thing, we also have some examples of companies that did development work funded by my network, that were quite small. They were limited to £25,000, so they couldn't do a lot. But I basically have public descriptions of those projects, because they had to agree to produce a public description when I paid them. So I can find case studies, and that's the point. We haven't tried to do that. We should do. Could I just ask? You mentioned other ecosystems. Is there something in particular you'd point me at, or would you mind telling me afterwards if there's something in particular I could look at to get an idea of what this looks like?
I think you'll need to look sort of worldwide to see where are there any innovative ecosystems that are surrounding something like this. And I'm not an expert at all in your field, so I would rather not. But you know, like we have found them within food, we have found them within female entrepreneurs. You know, it doesn't really matter what the DNA is, as long as you can find a fit. And some of these, the good innovative ecosystems, they have representatives of different stakeholders that could be very interesting for you, I think. And they often work with very low-hanging fruits, like doing hackathons. I don't know if you've heard about those, but you know, hackathons. You have a specific problem and you just dive into that a couple of days, and you buy the pizzas and the cola, and you know, these kind of events can engage different people.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. And it's nice to know you think we're not completely crazy.
Oh no, it takes more to do that.
Thank you. I mean, we do have time just for the last question as well, or comment from Nicholas.
Thank you very much. Very quick. In a previous life, I was working with a mutant of Arabidopsis that showed a pleiotropic phenotype. please kill me. So what I wanted to know is you're also generating a lot of data, and when that data comes from academic partners that could be reused, are you thinking in somehow providing that kind of data as a service? Maybe also for industry, taking in data from one crop to another. Is that part of it?
So we are, I think at the moment, so Sven showed the list of pilots that we have, and we have a data service. At the moment, we've kind of separated the two things out. So we have a data pilot, which is looking at building an information system to share the data that comes out. And that seems to be primarily targeted at academic partners at the moment. I think that's because it's still developing, the technically still developing, and the broad argument is they want people to put data in. They're trying to grow it, so they're focusing on people who can put data in as well as get data out, and academics are better than that. In terms of sharing data with industry, we've not done very much in the data pilot, but that's what we're trying to do in this pilot, but with a different sort of data, with data that the industry can use to develop stuff. Yeah. So with annotated machine images for machine learning. I mean, I imagine at some point these things, when we got operational, these things would come together, and there would be a mechanism that would allow industry to access the phenotyping data. But I think that's probably one more for the lawyers than me at the moment. Yeah. And I do know what Arabidopsis is. It's probably the only plant I recognize.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you everybody for participating. I'll add to Tony and Sven that we actually did some deliverables just a few weeks ago in Enrich, which might inspire you to sort of map out what's going on and what you should look at. So I'll just send you the links for those. To everybody else, I want to announce that next week we have another Enrich Your Coffee on knowledge transfer and how they've done it in Ireland and try to centralize it. And I don't have anything else to add. Madison?
No, I think that's it. I put the link to next week's episode, the registration page, in the chat. So if you want to check it out, and just a big thank you to Tony and Sven on my end.
Yeah, thank you, Tony and Sven, and thank you for everybody else.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.